it was while I was at Dot Records that I realized that I really wasn't tired of radio. That's when Jim Hawthorne came calling, and Gary Owens was leaving to go to KMPC, the station of the stars, to do afternoons. And that left the morning show open. And Jim Hawthorne asked me if I'd like to come to KFWB. And, of course, I jumped at the opportunity. Randy Wood understood. I went there. And I was there until about 64, middle of 65. And you can pick it up from there. That's when I decided once again that I wanted to do something else.
Now, you worked for the Cowboy.
Yes, I did.
I hear anybody that worked for Mr. Autry said he was wonderful.
Yeah, I had grown up listening to Melody Ranch every Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
And it was part of my early days of being truly interested in radio. I had certain shows that I would listen to. Melody Ranch was one of them, The Man in the White Hat. Another one was Mr. District Attorney, Champion of the People, Guardian of our fundamental rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it shall be my duty as District Attorney not only to prosecute to the limits of the law all persons accused of crimes perpetrated within this county, but to deliver with equal vigor the rights and privileges of all its citizens. There are days when I can't remember my name, but I can still remember that. So go figure, right, John?
Yeah. Now, Gene Autry really, he thought a lot of all of his employees.
Yes.
I know, because I've had several friends who've
Gene,
worked for him.
Gene was very hands-on. He was there every day almost,
loved
unless he
everybody,
was out
man.
of the city.
Yeah.
He had offices there, and you could go up and sit down across the desk and talk to him. I remember the day I signed my contract.
He especially loved you.
In Stan Spiro's office when Stan was general manager. And I'm sitting there signing my contract to do noon to 3 at KMPC. Mm-hmm. Jim Lang had been doing that period. He went back to San Francisco.
Right.
And so I took over that time period. And while I'm signing my contract, in walks the man in the white hat. And again, it was like an out-of-body experience. I jumped up and I couldn't, he shook my hand, and he knew who I was, and he said, I just want to welcome you to the station.
Isn't that?
But that's my memory of Gene Autry, and he couldn't have been nicer. He was just one of those very, very special people.
How long were you at KMPC, by the way?
I was there total almost 12 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good time. And during that time,
I went there, left, and came back.
but during that time, that's with the game shows.
Yes.
I'm going to talk about your game shows.
Yeah. When I was still at KFWB, before I went to KMPC, I was addicted to a show called Password with Allen Ludden.
Right.
And I would get off the air at 9 o'clock in the morning, go downstairs to Aldo's and have breakfast with the promotion guys, and then I'd rush home to watch Password with Allen Ludden. And I did some research, and I discovered that Allen Ludden went in 2 days a week, knocked out 10 shows, and 5 days he played golf. And I thought, hell, that's not a bad way to make a buck. I said, I think I want a little piece of that. So I went to the late Noel Rubeloff, God rest his soul, my agent at the time, Abrams Rubeloff. And I said, Noel, and I told him my story. And I said, I think, I've never really thought about being a game show host, but I'd like to go on an audition for a game show. So he did. He sent me on several auditions. I didn't get the first couple, but then I got a local show on KTLA called What's the Name of That Song? And it was on every night, 5 nights a week. And their deal, the producer's deal, was with NBC, and if it made it locally and did very well locally, then NBC would put it on the air. That's when daytime was comprised of a lot of different game shows. Sure. And sure enough, it made it locally, got on the air on NBC, and that was my first network game show called What's This Song? They had to shorten What's the Name of That Song down to What's This Song so it would fit in TV Guide, believe it or not. And some, the guys in New York make the big bucks by making the big decisions, right? Michael Brockman, you know this to be true. And they decided that Wink Martindale, somebody in New York, I think it was Bob Aaron, decided that Wink Martindale sounded too juvenile.
What?
And they said, what we'll do is knock off the K and he'll be Win Martindale.
Oh.
So for that first show, I did What's This Song starring Win Martindale. I remember Steve Bailey was the announcer. And when we first started, I would be waiting in the wings to come out and say hello. It was sort of a name that tune type of show, but called What's This Song? And Steve Bailey would say, now, here's the star of our show, Win Martindale. And I'd look around and say, who the hell's he talking about? Oh, I said, that's me. I got to go out there. So that was my first show. Only lasted a year, but it got me launched into game shows.
Okay, now, from What's This Song, You went on to host and produce 21 game shows. We're talking about Gambit, Tic Tac Toe, Dream Girl 67. We had the Headline Chasers, High Rollers, Trivial Pursuit, Debt, just to name a few. I mean, there were so many. Can you tell us your personal favorite, Wink?
Well, I think for a lot of different reasons, my personal favorite would have to be Tic Tac Dough.
Okay.
The main reason being, it was nice to get a regular check every week. And it was on, I did it for almost 8 years. And it became a huge success in prime access time period. That was before we had 250 different channels. And every night, Tic Tac Dough was usually combined with Joker's Wild in that 7 to 8 o'clock time period. And it became enormously, enormously successful. And that is the show that I would have to point out as being my own personal favorite, although I loved some other shows, like High Rollers with the Big Dice.
Sure.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I love Gambit, the blackjack game,
Right.
from Heater Quigley. So there are a lot of different shows. Let me tell you about, I'll tell you a funny story, and then I'll tell you a serious story about
Okay.
Tic Tac Dough.
All right.
Every fall, we did an over 80s tournament where all the players were over the age of 80. And I was doing interviews with the contestants. Dr. Reba Kelly was 88 years old, and she was a widower. And I said, Dr. Kelly, at your advanced age, do you still think about dating at all? And she looked at me, and without batting an eye, and I'm sure that Mark Maxwell Smith or Dan Enright or Jack Barry gave her this answer. But man, she didn't blink an eye. She said, yes, Wink, I have 4 boyfriends. I said, really? She said, yes, I get up in the morning with Will Power. I take a walk with Arthur Itis. I come home with Charlie Horse, and I go to bed at night with Ben Gay.
Do you have any memories of when you did Tic Tac Toe? And I mean, that was a wonderful one. But if you have another one,
this is a more serious story. Sandy and I were attending. Let me preface this by saying, when you talk into that red light on that camera, no matter what kind of show you're doing, you do not know who you're reaching out there and in what way. And this story proves it. We were at a charitable function at the Universal Hilton Hotel. This was about 2005 or 6. And it was during the auction period before the evening started, before we went in for dinner, silent auction. And I had a guy tap me on the shoulder. And I looked around. He said, Mr. Martindale. I said, no, Wink. He said, okay, Wink. I just want to say hello to you for my brother. My brother loved your show more than any other show on television. He loved the trivia aspect of your show, and he never missed it. I said, really? He said, yeah, he was in the Navy. He was a lieutenant in the Navy stationed in San Diego, and he used to come up every weekend for tapings at CBS. And it finally got to the point, he said, where taping the shows and just watching wasn't enough. He wanted to be on the show. So he came up midweek, went to Century City to the Barry and Enright offices, took the test, played the game, and got on the show. And I sensed that it was so important to him that perhaps he would like those episodes on which he starred, on which he was a contestant. And I said, I think I can get him for him. He said, no, he's no longer with us. I said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And it turns out his brother was Chick Burlingame, pilot of American Airlines Flight 77 that crashed into the Pentagon on 9/11. I still get emotional when I tell the story. But that's why I said at the outset that when you do a show, whether it's a game show or a dramatic show or you're doing a movie or whatever, you never know how what you're saying and what you're doing affects those people out there. Thank you.
Anyway, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to share another recording that you made recently entitled "I Stand for Everyone." Now, it's an example of the power of the spoken word. It's a narrative that some people say is even better than deck of cards. So, can we hear it?
This narrative was written by a songwriter named Paul Hampton. He's written a lot of hits over the years, such as Sea of Heartbreak for Don Gibson. You may remember that. You Don't Know What You've Got Till You Lose It for Al Donner back in the 60s, and many others, some with lyricist Hal David. In my mind, these lines to this narration are an inspiring patriotic anthem to help all of us see the world, ourselves, humanity, and our place in it just a little bit better. It's non-political and yet strongly patriotic, somewhat like Lee Greenwood's God Bless the USA. It's become an opening theme at political rallies. This is I Stand for Everyone. Every day I hear my Father's voice say, the footprints we make are the stands that we take to bring our country together. I am the flag of our country. This is truly who I am. And when you pledge allegiance to me, remember the things for which I stand. I stand in reverence to the power above me. Stand for the underdog whose dream comes true. I stand to honor a great performance. Stand in awe of love in bloom. I stand for that kind of ambition that's a blessing and a curse. I stand for speaking strictly from the heart, for better or worse. But first, I stand for those whose time was spent before they could spend their time. I stand for everyone who lost their place in line. Oh, I stand for kissing and a whole lot of hugging. Stand for the would-have-beens had they just held on. I stand for givers who know no limits. Stand in hope when hope is gone. I stand for the things you won't say when you don't want to hurt a friend. I stand for living life as it will never end. But first, I stand for us who put our trust in the hands of God's design. I stand for everyone who lost their place in line. Oh, I stand for everyone who's felt the turn of the screw, for those who know rejection is just another point of view. I've saved a place in line for everybody still tracing their dreams, or so it seems. I stand for the bold and the daring who spun out on Dead Man's Curve. I stand in lieu of everybody who deserves to be heard. But first, I stand for those whose time was spent before they could spend their time. I stand for everyone. I stand for everyone. I stand for everyone who lost their place in line.
All right. You know, at one of our marvelous Pacific Pioneer broadcast luncheons, Wink Martindale came up to me at my table and he said, "Shotgun, I would like you to interview me at the Coffee With." And it was an honor for you to ask me that. I really appreciate it. It meant a lot to me.
I want to thank all of you for being here today. It's really nice of you to give up your Saturday morning. And Wayne Newton used to say a couple of things at the end of his show, and I'd like to repeat them for each of you here today. He said, when you take of a man's money, you've simply taken a part of his wealth. But when you've taken of a person's time, you've taken a part of his life. And I thank you for your time. And finally, Wayne used to say, it really doesn't matter how it ends for me. All that matters are the hearts and minds we touch along the way. God bless you all. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for joining us. You know, I can already feel the excitement building for our next Hollywood Media Professional Celebrity Showcase.